Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Is not something we say because it's a warm and fuzzy feeling. It's a chilling one. Dance like no one's watching means you dance more freely. Maybe because we're less free while we're being watched. Mass surveillance could be the future in America, always being watched, always being assessed. Maybe it feels like they want to keep us in line.
Freedoms don't come back, and privacy doesn't come back.
So how did the wealthiest suburb in the United States become the front line of the fight against mass surveillance? This is the story of how Flock, a $7.5 billion surveillance company, has a proven playbook to secure local government contracts behind closed doors. Our story starts in Scarsdale Village, New York, in Westchester County, where average annual household income is $569,000 a year, and a typical home value is $1.4 million. I'm from the tri-state area, and my dad's a contractor. When I told him I was going to Scarsdale, he said, "They don't even let you truck soil out of Scarsdale if you're doing work there. You cannot take soil or rock out. It's against the law." And I looked it up, and it's true. You need a permit to take dirt and rocks out of Scarsdale because they ship such expensive stuff in. This might be the only place in the world where residents' dirt is more protected than their data. I spoke to Scarsdale residents about how something like this could have happened.
Scarsdale is a very highly educated community. Maybe 5,500 households, maybe 18,000 people. Very, very deliberative, very, very thoughtful community. We will debate pickleball courts, we'll debate the municipal pool, we will debate the renovations to the public library. We are still debating what to do with a parking facility in the village center. There is nothing that we won't debate. But we didn't even have a chance to debate mass surveillance.
Scarsdale citizens like to complain. and whenever there's something like, from my childhood, I remember there was something about windows in an elementary school, and it was meeting after meeting after meeting. And it seemed very quickly that this went through like a fait accompli very, very quickly.
But ever since the Village Board of Trustees voted on April 8th without public notice to adopt a $2.1 million contract with Flock, public discussion has revolved around mass surveillance.
Okay, we have a busy mayor's comments this evening.
Why was no effort ever made to engage with the community?
I'm appalled by the lack of response.
The system that Scarsdale wishes to implement is extremely dangerous. It is a system that seldom, if ever, provides any crime reduction or improvement in the quality of life.
This board voted in secret on April 8th.
Voting on the contract was not a part of the agenda. Mayor Justin Arrest moved to have a vote on the contract right there during the meeting.
I do need to entertain a motion to amend the agenda for this evening for two reasons. One is to add a resolution regarding the authorization to execute an agreement with Flock Group, Inc. for public safety technology.
The entire process took 37 seconds total.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Great. Thank you.
At the next public meeting on April 22nd, Scarsdale residents showed up and started to speak their mind about a contract that had already been inked.
When announcing the contract to install 172 Flock cameras across Norfolk, the police chief, Mark Talbot, said his office wanted to create, quote, a nice curtain of technology that would make it, quote, difficult to drive anywhere of any distance without running into a camera somewhere, unquote. Lee Schmidt, one of the plaintiffs in the case, said 4 of the cameras had fenced in his neighborhood. He was outraged by the loss of privacy, said Michael Seufer, an attorney at the Institute of Justice who's representing him. He noticed that he basically couldn't leave his neighborhood without one of the cameras picking it up.
That's Josh Frankel. He's how I found out about this story. He said what's going on here is crazy. The village board has voted to adopt this massive mass surveillance contract without giving any public notice. And that did sound crazy, but I didn't know just how crazy it was.
Flock apparently seems to be fond of installing cameras without permits, for which they were cited and apparently have been banned in 2 states. Westchester County has laws limiting cooperation, but ICE has accessed a trove of data that holds license plate readers.
We are looking into it. We want to get more information ourselves about what exactly happened, because that couldn't happen here.
Let's talk a little bit about precisely how this technology works. At the June 10th meeting, the last meeting, you said the system's extremely dangerous
because of 2 properties. Firstly, it is non-specific. It is not actively targeted only at lawbreakers, but passively gathers data on everyone, whether they are suspected of an infraction or not, creating a set of law enforcement records on everyone who lives in or even passes through Scarsdale. Secondly, it is persistent. Because the records are kept for several weeks at the very least, they allow retroactive surveillance. Not only does the technology track citizens through space, it tracks them through time.
What does that mean?
Yes. So think of how police used to do surveillance. You have to have a suspicion of someone, and they go get a warrant for a cop, or even not. They may follow somebody on the street. But it starts with a suspicion, and then there has to be action taken to follow that person going forward. That is traditional. That is a check upon power, because you have to articulate a suspicion. You have to have men or women following the person. You're expending resources to have that surveillance. And when you feel it's not worth it, you stop. That's not what's happening here. We have a surveillance system that is just there. And anytime you come across a suspicion, I don't like what he said at this meeting. What has he been doing for the past 30 days? What has he been doing for the past 90 days? You can actually go into the database and look for stuff to see if you can tag that person with a crime. Police officers know if you follow someone in a car for a couple of miles, the likelihood is you'll be able to pull them over for something. What we're doing here is we're creating that database so that we can always do that for anyone, that you're constantly tracking people's movements. You have that system in place so that you don't need to articulate the suspicion before you're gathering data on someone, before you're actually trying to tag someone with wrongdoing. When you have that system there, all someone has to do is say, I don't like that person, and then you've got that surveillance already established.
40% of our crime, 40%, is identity theft. How mass surveillance is going to do anything to solve our identity theft problem is beyond me. Vehicular theft is next to nothing. Burglaries are next to nothing. Larceny is arguably not a crime that this is going to prevent in any event, because it's really a crime of opportunity. So the crimes that you would expect this to aid with, we don't have.
The property crime a few years ago, they had to send out a notice to the population, stop leaving your key fobs in your cars because that's why they get stolen. Really. I mean, and for this, we want to sacrifice a tremendous amount of privacy and our freedom.
On the night of the vote, April 8th, very few residents showed up to the public meeting.
Attendance at the board meetings varies. It fluctuates depending on what the agenda is. Mm-hmm. The agenda that evening, the board had been in a quote-unquote executive session. That was billed as public safety equipment. The resolution that they introduced that night and then voted on with flock safety was also billed as public safety equipment. I don't think that anybody who looked at the agenda in advance would have thought that public safety equipment involved live cameras, license plate readers, drone technology, basically a mass surveillance system. So maybe you're thinking public safety equipment is a traffic light, a crosswalk, a yield sign, something along those lines, but not mass surveillance.
Shortly after the 6 p.m. meeting started, the police chief Stephen Del Bene took the floor and gave a presentation on flock safety.
Welcome to the April 8th work session of the board. We're going to talk about public safety. I'm here to present a public safety technology initiative. Here with me tonight on Zoom are Hector and Fritz, both who work with Flock. Hector is the Director of Municipal Affairs, and Fritz, while I don't know his technology, he is the drone as a first responder expert. He piloted the program for the Chula Vista Police Department. He's known to be the godfather of the program in America.
When I was at the NSA, I believe very much in the mission of what I was doing. And I recognized that surveillance was a powerful, powerful weapon. And the NSA's charter said it had to be turned outwards and not inwards, that it is not meant to be used against American citizens. It is against foreign adversaries. And since I left, and I was I was an intern and contracted briefly, since then it was used against American citizens. And so the idea of being counted as an adversary, as myself, as an American citizen, I realized that, like other weapons, the control of them is as important as their existence. And if they can be properly used or they can be misused. And increasingly, I noticed since my time at the NSA that politicians have been eager to distribute these weapons and use them in a way that I believe is misuse.
I'll be sharing a proposal to implement a modern public safety technology package that includes license plate readers, live view cameras, and a drone as a first responder program.
Chief Del Bene gave an overview of how Scarsdale Village could use Flock's mass surveillance technologies, or, as he called it, an ecosystem of interconnected tools, license plate readers, live view cameras, and drone as first responder technology.
LPRs capture not just a snapshot of the plate, it's actually a digital fingerprint of the vehicle. While they do take a picture of the license plate, they also capture the make and model, the vehicle color, the state of registration, and sometimes even damaged decals or rooftop accessories of vehicles. Live view cameras. Live view cameras are about connecting all the dots, in my opinion. We're bringing together footage from both public and private sources to create one integrated picture of what's happening in real time. Drone as a first responder. The DFR program represents a fundamental shift. Instead of officers driving to a scene blind, a drone is launched immediately, often arriving in under 90 seconds, providing live aerial footage before an officer's tires even hit the curb in front of the scene.
We have an amazing interlocking set of surveillance tools that most citizens are aware of on some level, but they have no idea how deep or how much information is being gathered constantly. When I did a piece a number of years ago on aerial surveillance, it turned out that the FBI was flying missions over numerous cities, having Cessnas and helicopters fly in patterns just to gather intelligence over American cities all the time. We weren't aware of it. It was shocking. And the FBI admitted it, and it's continued. And nothing has changed. And now if you ask people if the FBI is conducting surveillance flights, I mean, they'll be shocked again if you reveal it to them. I think these things hit us, but then we easily forget them because they don't have an immediate impact on our lives, or so we think.
Why do you think they wouldn't say, we're getting a presentation from, the police, the local police, on a flock camera contract?
the framing of it was so misleading, nobody took it up because nobody realized what was going on.
After the presentation ended, the mayor moved to go into executive session and meet privately until the next meeting at 8 p.m.
Thank you both very much. We appreciate your time. I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session and talk about public safety and personnel. For a second. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yeah,
Good night.
Later on that same night, on April 8th at the 8 p.m. meeting, Mayor Arrest moved to change the agenda to add a motion to adopt the flock contract. The resolution passed 6-1.
I do need to entertain a motion to amend the agenda for this evening for two reasons. One is to add a resolution regarding the authorization to execute an agreement with Flock Group Inc. for public safety technology. That is related to the work session earlier, as well as the annual meeting resolutions were intended to be part of the consent agenda. So the second part will be to modify the agenda to move that within the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Great. Thank you.
The way that the open meetings law works in New York, you can introduce something at the last minute as long as you get unanimous consent at that meeting. And it's usually reserved for emergency situations, right? If maybe an emergency expenditure, there's some natural disaster. It was used a couple of times in the last year to appoint a couple of police officers, right? Which I understand you want your police fully staffed. Beyond that, it should be an emergency. But what happened at that April 8th meeting was they got unanimous consent early on in the meeting to slip this into the agenda. And then later on, when they got to their agenda, they voted on it with, it was a 6-1 vote. There was actually one trustee who voted against it.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a resolution regarding the authorization to execute an agreement with Flock Group, Inc., otherwise known as Flock Safety, for public safety technology.
Thank you, Trustee Mazur. Is there a second? Okay, so for discussion, I'll ask if anybody does, but I just want to mention a couple things. One is I really want to thank Chief Del Bene. I want to thank our manager, Alex Marshall, and I want to thank our counsel, of course, Nick Ward-Willis, for all the efforts to make this possible. And I think it really is an exciting opportunity for our community. And it will, the anticipation is that this entire project will be funded with grant money. We also do not anticipate any of the hardware as part of this program to be installed or begin using it for at least 3 months. There will be additional information shared with the community about the features and just some more information about it. So stay tuned on all of that, but I just wanted to share that with the community before we vote, unless there are any other comments.
The lone no vote was Jeremy Gans, and he voiced his concerns with mass surveillance during the April 8th meeting.
I'm going to be voting no on this. I support our police and public safety as a priority. I think I have questions on privacy and surveillance that were expressed earlier. I don't need to go into detail. And I appreciate the money from the federal government, but I wish they would spend it on places other than surveilling their own citizens.
Thank you, Trustee Gans. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you very much.
So tell me where you first heard about the Flock contract.
So the Flock contract was broken by a local journalist.
In the local paper?
We no longer have a local paper. Sadly, it folded about 1.5 years ago. There's a woman in town, a resident, Joanne Wallenstein, who runs a website that has picked up where the local paper left off. And the board, under unanimous consent, took up this resolution on April 8th, voted on it that same evening. She sort of broke this story on April 9th to everyone's surprise. And that was how most of us found out what had happened. without her publishing that piece on April 9th, it's possible we might still be in the dark about it.
So because a woman who runs a blog happened to be at this meeting, we know about this?
Basically, yes.
The void of local news created an environment where this wasn't being closely reported on. But this isn't an issue unique to Scarsdale. Over the past 2 decades, 3,300 local newspapers have vanished in the United States. Only 5,600 remain, and 80% are weeklies.
I honestly don't know whether they had any plan whatsoever about how to disclose this, or even if to disclose it. And now they are like a deer in the headlights, I think. And they're determined, I believe, it's the old saying, right? It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where they are, although they'll never ask forgiveness either. But I think now they're dug in and they're doubling down, and I don't think there's much chance they're going back.
One recent item that has drawn public attention is the village's adoption of a public safety technology initiative, including a contract with Flock Safety. Let me be clear. This initiative was discussed at a properly noticed, publicly accessible work session. The agenda listed the item as public safety equipment, a broad term, yes, but not an attempt to obscure. While we acknowledge backup materials would have been helpful, they were not ready.
Most of my questions, very specific questions, straightforward questions, most of them have gone unanswered. Mm-hmm. What I really wanted to find out and still want to find out is why this was so urgent, why was it so time sensitive, why did it need to happen without proper notice all in one night? And I don't have a good answer for that.
After not getting any satisfactory answers from the village board, the mayor, or the police chief, Josh Frankel made a Freedom of Information Law request, or a FOIL, to obtain any official record of communications between public officials in Scarsdale and Flock. It turns out the earliest contact between public officials in Scarsdale and Flock was on January 15th, months before the April 8th meeting.
So there was time, or should have been time, for them to make an announcement. This is what we're thinking about. We're going to make a representative available. I assure you, town hall would have been packed. Mm-hmm. And again, some people would have expressed interest in having this, and some people do, and that's okay. A lot of people don't. But we never had the chance to have that discussion.
And one of the reasons the mayor gave for why they didn't inform the public of the contract was they didn't have materials available.
While we acknowledge backup materials would have been helpful, they were not ready.
The other interesting part about this email is that it's addressed to Stephen Del Bene, who wasn't even the police chief at the time. The board selected him to be the new chief on January 14th. The night before this email. So that means this is what he did on his first day as the police chief nominee. His first official day as police chief would be February 1st. So he set this meeting up the very next day. Scarsdale public officials proceeded to discuss Flock for the next 3 months behind closed doors. On March 31st, Chief Del Bene sent an email saying the map is approved. The subject indicated that it was a map of where Flock cameras would go in Scarsdale. This is before the contract was finalized, before they had any sort of funding, before they had voted on it in a public meeting, before the police chief had even given a presentation on Flock to the town board.
Calling surveillance a weapon is really interesting. I don't think I've heard anyone call it a weapon. The city's trying to say it's going to bring about more safety. This is going to be used to strictly catch criminals, and it's for the best of the, villagers in Scarsdale. What would you say to them to sort of change their mind that mass surveillance can be a weapon?
I don't think I'm going to change their mind. I think they know it's a weapon. I think that, like a taser, they think it is a tool that they can use to do what they want, which is reduce crime, become more popular among the voters. A taser can be misused. Should police have tasers? Probably. Should police have firearms? Maybe. Should police have automatic rifles? Should police have bazookas? I mean, the question is the degree and what the costs are and what the benefits are. And for a lot of these weapons, I mean, you have the benefits put out there, but never the costs. I think surveillance is one of those because it does have an impact on society. We are seeing the impacts.
With all of this back and forth with Flock and public officials in Scarsdale, why not let the public know you're considering a $2.1 million contract to put cameras all over town?
This process has been a shameful masterclass in opacity and poor governance and an indelible stain on this board's legacy.
To you, Mr. Mayor and Village Manager, sadly, we have been invisible. Neither of you have any technology expertise whatsoever, especially in the field of surveillance technology. And yet, Mr. Mayor, you signed a contract with Flock Safety without any evidence that you yourself vetted this company. The village manager wrote me that there was no request for proposal.
Typically, when there's a big public contract, almost everywhere in the country, there's a bid for contracts. So they get sort of the best deal, the best use of public dollars. Did that happen here?
So that's also part of New York State law. There should be, typically, what you want to see is a competitive bidding process, requests for proposals, that type of thing. The other way to go, which is how we went, is to quote unquote sole source a contract, which is what we did with Flock. The board took the police chief's word that Flock is the one that we need, Flock is the one that we want. We looked at Motorola, we looked at a couple of other companies. That said, I don't know that the law really allows for the board to take the police chief's word. And when I did a little bit of additional research, I actually found that Flock produces its own document to give to municipalities to justify sole sourcing with Flock. So it's a bit of a circle jerk, right? Flock comes into town, they say, we want to be your mass surveillance provider. You can do it sole sourcing a contract with us, and here's the letter that you need to justify that sole sourcing. And it just comes full circle and the contract is signed.
A FOIL request for any market research, vendor analysis, or documentation evaluating alternative providers of similar technology or services only rendered a sole source justification letter signed by Flock's CEO. Different versions of the same sole source justification letter can be found on the official government websites of the state of California, Sussex County, Virginia, Woodburn, Oregon, and the state of Mississippi. I reached out to the sales rep at Flock, Joe Rosenberg, that negotiated the contract in Scarsdale, and I was instead referred to Holly Boleyn, the director of national communications at Flock, and she agreed to speak to me on a recorded phone call on the record. And so when it comes to the sole source justification letter, typically it's coming from the CEO, but I'm curious if you can say anything about that, when that comes into play, when Flock is, let's say, trying to secure a contract with a local community.
Yes, I mean, sometimes when requested, when we're working with the PD or the mayor, we send a sole, again, every city's super different. So sometimes it's a sole source. Sometimes, like right now, I can't talk about it because we're in the quiet period, but we've worked with a partner to respond to a massive RFP for the city of Chicago's new technology. Sometimes we work through RFI. It's like super, super dependent on the locality.
But the sole source justification letter is not the only similarity between Scarsdale, New York, and the other communities with Flock contracts.
So you found that Flock is doing this in other places?
Yes, many, many other places. In fact, last week there was an article in Sedona, Arizona, the Sedona Red Rock News, where the parallel to what has happened in Scarsdale in Sedona is too eerie to be coincidental. No public notice, done very secretively, no announcement.
Red Rock News, a local newspaper in Sedona, published on June 20th that the city never agendized the installation of the cameras for discussion by the city council and the public, and instead mentioned an indefinite plan to acquire such cameras only briefly during the city's most recent budget work session on April 30th and May 1st, without providing either written or verbal specifics. So, I asked Holly at Flock about the unusual similarities. It's interesting to see that there's this sole source justification letter and this similar adoption of the contract without public disclosure across the country with Flock. So, I guess I'm wondering, is that a strategy that Flock has internally?
There is no specific strategy around how we work with cities on contracts because it's very dependent on the city. From my understanding in Scottsdale, and I'll admit that we have contracts across the country, so I'm not the salesperson from Scarsdale, but from my understanding on Scarsdale, we were working with the mayor and the PD. They were able to get the funding, and then it was passed by the board, I believe, unanimously. So I don't think this was particularly controversial.
Yeah, so I know the board vote was 6-1. There was one guy who was against it.
Sure, gotcha.
And the funding has not come through. They got a letter from Gillibrand's office that they didn't get the grant that was going to fund the contract. So now it's actually on pause after a few weeks of pretty intense public comment of people who are not happy with how the board went about this or adopting mass surveillance. So that's where we're at now. With the contract.
Gotcha.
I realized after listening back that I should have given her a follow-up question to get a more direct answer. And since she was so forthcoming about me asking her more questions...
If you have any follow-up questions too, you can always text me. This is my cell.
Okay, perfect. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it.
I texted her, "Hi Holly, a quick follow-up. I'm curious, given the identical scenarios with the contracts in Sedona and Scarsdale, can you say it has never been a part of Flock's strategy to discourage public input or disclosure prior to a locality approving a contract?" Holly has yet to get back to me on that one.
This is playing out in community after community after community. And I don't know how and where, we do know how and where it ends.
This is what was the FBI with their plans were denying that they were doing. What's called persistent surveillance. You set up a plane, you go for hours and hours and hours and you circulate. And if there happens to be a crime in that area, you've got the surveillance already there. So with this establishment of this sort of system, you are creating persistent surveillance. And on not just people you suspect that you have to articulate, but everyone. So every citizen who passes through on the license plate reader, there it is.
Because of all of these missteps, now the public is pretty upset. A lot of people have showed up to the town board meetings to say we don't like what's going on with Flock. Have you seen people also show up and say, no, we really need mass surveillance in Scarsdale. I'm for this.
So there is a petition online that another resident put up to oppose what had happened. Now, mind you, the contract is already signed. So this could all be a fait accompli, right? I think this could be a done deal, although the mayor does say that we have the right to terminate the contract within 180 days. So, and I think it kicks in on July 1st. But there is this petition online that has over 400 signatures opposed, which is a fairly big number for Scarsdale. There is a meeting this upcoming Tuesday, tomorrow night, actually, the 24th. There have been some letters submitted to the board from people who are in favor of the technology for whatever reason. And I don't begrudge anybody their opinion as to whether they want or don't want. I'm staunchly opposed to it, but if you want it, then you want it. but the process here was sorely lacking.
Right. You sign a contract before you allow the public to weigh in. It seems to be doing things backwards.
Completely backwards.
Contracts being signed without much ado seems to have been Flock's strategy for years. In Washington state, 4 jurisdictions quietly signed contracts with Flock: Kennewick, Pasco, Richland, and West Richland in 2022. Only 2 of the 4 jurisdictions publicly approved the contracts, and the 2 that did never had public comment. It was a part of something called a consent agenda. Consent agendas are intended to pass items in bulk, all with one vote, with no discussion, because they're reserved for routine or non-controversial agenda items. As a result of passing resolutions in bulk, on at least one occasion, public officials voted to adopt a Flock contract by accident. The commissioners of Lucas County, Ohio, on July 15th, led by President Pete Gherkin, who introduced the motion, voted to adopt a Flock contract.
Items 13 through 17 are from the Sheriff's Office. Christy Munt is here to present.
The Sheriff's Department held agenda items 13 through 17, and the Village Board voted on all of them together with a simple yes or no roll call vote.
Item 16 is approval of the agreement between the Sheriff's Office and Flock Group Incorporated. The Sheriff's Office is seeking permission to enter into a 5-year agreement with Flock Safety Incorporated for the Flock License Plate Reader Software Program in an annual amount of $62,500. This agreement is from May 26th of 2025 through May 25th of 2029 with a total price of $250,000 over the 5-year contract.
Okay, any questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Gherkin. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Gherkin?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Sebecki?
Yes, thank you.
On July 22nd, they rescinded the motion.
Last week in our conversations, we passed resolution 2025-515, the approval agreement between the Lucas County Sheriff's Office and Flock Group for Flock Safety License Reader Platform Services. I did vote yes on that. Having time to reflect on my vote like that, I would walk in a resolution. I would like to rescind the approval of that agreement.
Gherkin also had some choice words for Flock on the 22nd to explain why he was rescinding the resolution that he introduced.
We're talking about enhanced surveillance of our community through license plate readers that are placed throughout the county. They're indiscriminate in their gathering of data. They capture license plates, precise times and locations, even if drivers haven't committed any offense or are suspected of committing any offense. Once recorded, you lose control over that data. So we are mass surveilling our citizens through these license plate readers without strict controls over the data, how the Flock Group uses it, what their time sensitivity on, are they ever retired or returned to us, and how it affects our citizens. But we all know the obvious. We're living in a time where mass surveillance has now become a federal policy and has had chilling effects on our population, especially the minority population. So even though I did vote in favor of this agreement with Flock, I must ask to reconsider my vote, and I would like to bring this back before the board. It's inappropriate for the sheriff under time of budget constraints on all of us to spend $250,000 to mass surveil our community without any attended outcome. So I think there's a resolution that we should have rescinding that. Does the board have that?
Rescinding resolution number 2025-515 for the approval of an agreement between Lucas County Sheriff's Office and Flock Group Incorporated for Flock Safety License Plate Reader Platform Services.
Thank you.
Yes. I would ask that we hold this because I have many questions. I don't know if the contract has been signed by the sheriff or not. And also, I would like to ask the representative from the sheriff's office. I mean, Brittany was here. Settler was here last week to present this, and there wasn't any questions at the time, but I would like to allow them to be able to come back if we could hold off on this rescinding. A question of has a contract been signed, but B, to have a representative or the sheriff be present to answer any questions.
Call for motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Clerk
Call the roll. Commissioner Gherkin?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Sebecki?
No, for those stated reasons.
Despite Flock being frequently called a mass surveillance company, Holly at Flock let me know that that's not what they would call it.
Yeah, we also don't categorize Flock as mass surveillance, but that doesn't answer your question.
Yeah, I'm curious how you would describe it in that case.
So we're a system of public safety technology. So license plate readers don't have to be shared outside of any particular customer. So Scarsdale chooses, they can just access their cameras and not share them with any other department nearby.
404 Media reported that a Johnson County sheriff wanted to look into a woman who had crossed state lines to receive an abortion. Because they were in Flock's network, he was able to search 83,000 cameras, including in states like Illinois and Washington, where abortion is legal. The 404 story where the Texas sheriff was relying on cameras outside of Johnson County.
Yes.
So if Scarsdale is using these cameras, right? And let's say, the chief wants to do a search to find someone. Because they have Flock system in Scarsdale, is it a part of the contract that they can search cameras in other localities that you have as well?
It is not part of the contract, so that is a capability on the Flock system, but it's all opt-in.
Surveillance cameras can be bought anywhere. What Flock offers is a national network of cameras across 5,000 communities in 49 states, if you opt in. It seems that, the main argument in the sole source contract is that, no one else makes what Flock makes. Would you say that's an accurate read?
Yes, I would say that's an accurate read.
The fact that Flock can tie into a national database, that kind of shows that this isn't just about the village of Scarsdale and keeping the people here safe.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. That information flows two ways. That we're getting data from the national system is getting data from us. That Flock is building its own database. We don't know what it does. In fact, I'll have to double check on the terms of service, but when I read the terms of service, I thought that it said that the data was Flock's, that Scarsdale was able to use it, but the data was Flock's.
If a federal agency, there's something in here about sharing with third parties where you're obligated by law, and that can mean various things. So I'm asking for clarity. But if there was a federal investigation that said Department of Homeland Security or ICE says, we believe this car was going through Scarsdale, we are going to disclose your data, customer data defined in the contract with them.
Yep.
Are you allowed to do that, or do you need our permission?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So, and I think you may be referring to our contract, so I do have to say I'm obviously not your attorney, but I can give you kind of the explanation of our terms, and then you all can work with our attorneys if needed. The data is owned by the village. We will not share that information. If there is a subpoena of sorts, there's also a clause in there, that can be strengthened or added that makes sure that we have to notify the village. We are in agreement with that, and that's what we would do. That is our procedure. So what would that look like in real life? If there is a subpoena by some federal agency or a court to Flock, we will let the village of Scarsdale know we've received this and you are the owner of this data, to give you all enough time to, adjudicate or defend the data if you would like to do so.
And Flock has never gotten a subpoena directly from the government to access any of their systems.
So our data is not owned by us. The data collected through Flock Systems is owned by the customer, so it would be owned by Scarsdale PD, so it would be their responsibility to respond to that subpoena. It's not our data.
Sorry, can you just clarify? You said you don't have access to our data, but then a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about, Trustee Gantz asked about if you were subpoenaed, you said you would give the village time to have a response, but ultimately you would have to turn it over. So then, to me, that means you do have access to our data. So can you just clarify that?
Yeah, in section, 4.1, customer hereby grants Flock a limited to use customer data as may be necessary.
Yes. So we are the guardians of your data, right? We have them in AWS Government Cloud for you. So we'd have to turn that over, but not without giving the village notice.
Once this genie is out of the bottle, that genie's not going back in, right? This data will be, to me, the way I see it, it is not a matter of if this data will be abused and misused, only a matter of when and by whom.
Every technology company that has a large database has ignored their terms and services and their conditions, violated people's privacy. It happens over and over and over again. They get a slap on the wrist and they move on. And the data's out there. I mean, look at Google's evolution over the years. The fact that they no longer have the "don't do evil" part of their motto, it's telling. Drip by drip, they change, and unless there is some sort of mechanism for enforcement, I think it's guaranteed that this data will be misused.
So Flock, even if a locality wanted it, they could not offer like facial recognition.
We don't have it.
Interesting.
They'd have to go to another vendor.
Holly made very clear that Flock does not offer facial recognition technology, but all it would take would be someone willing to use facial recognition software on the video footage that they get from Flock's cameras. All it would take is someone with access to Flock's live view camera feed to download the video, take that file, and upload it into a facial recognition software program, which could then analyze the video and identify the individual's faces in it. Then, by giving the facial recognition software access to your computer screen, it could then assess the live feed footage for the face that's been recognized. If an individual goes out of view from one of Flock's stationary cameras, they could send a drone as a first responder to their last notified location. The combination of facial recognition software and the level of integrated surveillance offered by Flock could allow for the tracking of individuals in real time.
There was a woman who was an attorney for a law firm who was representing clients against an entertainment firm. And she tried to get into Radio City Music Hall, which happened to be owned by this entertainment firm. Face recognition detected who she was, and she was denied entry and escorted out of the building because this face recognition system said, "I don't like her." This facial recognition property has been used to force people, deny access to things, and it can be used to arrest people or to deny them their rights. And I mean, this is a real fear. And the fact that we're installing this stuff means that we're extending that mechanism. Even if we think it will be used right, that database is being fed. And as we all know, database data escapes into the wild when you have hackers, especially when it's in private hands. These private institutions use the data for their own purposes, which may not be parallel to what the government wants.
Do you feel like these cameras are a violation of your privacy?
I do. I do. I mean, I believe in the Fourth Amendment, right? I mean, I think that, and it's being fought in court right now, or a trial will start soon in Norfolk, Virginia, on Fourth Amendment grounds. I understand that there's no expectation of privacy once you're out in public. I think this crosses a line. It does for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one wants to be watched all the time.
Right.
Joe Rosenberg, in his conversation with Scarsdale representatives, said that there's a list of people who could speak to leaving Motorola and joining in a contract with Flock instead. Interestingly, 2 of those former public officials are now employed at Flock. Something Flock has done in the past is hire people who adopted Flock on the law enforcement side when they were in the public sector and then joined over to Flock in sales positions, basically?
No, engineers also, and customer success and solutions consultants, but it's not necessarily people that adopted Flock. It's just former law enforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hire a lot of former law enforcement. We're proud of it.
Gotcha.
I mean, just for a sense, like, we work with over 5,000 police agencies across the country. Many police agencies have Flock technology, and we hire former law enforcement because they understand the product and they're good at talking about it. And many of them want to work in public service and public safety and find that working for Flock aligns with their mission. So it's quite above board, and we are proud of hiring former law enforcement.
Gotcha. The reason I ask is because on that list of like former Motorola customers that went over to become Flock customers, 2 of them work for Flock now.
Yeah, we have, I mean, I would say, don't quote me on this exact number, but probably 100 people at Flock are former law enforcement.
Okay. How does that compare to like the total workforce at Flock?
I think we just hit 1,500.
Okay.
The New Hampshire example, which came up at one of the meetings, where one person said, look, New Hampshire has a statute that says, or a regulation that says, all license plate data, unless it specifically has a target, has to be deleted after 3 minutes. That's specifically to avoid this problem. And our police have decided, because he feels that it's in his interest, that his expertise says that it's not a good idea, he wants to hold it for longer. But that creates this environment of persistent surveillance.
No lawyer, you got 4 lawyers on this board, and none of you guys raise any questions about the village attorney's erroneous and opinion saying that this is okay to do. I know that you wanted to placate the police chief who likes Flock very much, but that's not justification for a no-bid single source solution contract. And the facts are clear that there's other stuff available out there. The village board knew in January, when the presentation was made by the police chief about the request for $200,000 to upgrade the capabilities, he was basically talking about the Flock contract at that date. And the public was never made aware of the advanced stage of this, or the possibility of what this would be used for. And it's just terrible governance, and it's continuing to be, you're not telling the truth to the village, and it's a terrible state of affairs. And you should really admit it and, be much more transparent going forward. Thank you.
I don't know if you want to talk about this on the record, because I don't know if he said it to you off the record, but the city attorney saying this is one of the most restrictive contracts we've gotten from Flock.
Oh, he said that in public.
Oh.
He said that at a board meeting.
The city attorney said in a board meeting.
The village attorney, yes. Said at a board meeting, yes. That this is one of the most, we got a deal like nobody's ever seen before. Right? Right? He said that.
Yes.
Do I know that to be true because the village attorney said it? No. Do I believe the village attorney? No, I don't.
You probably don't know the answer to this, but why would the village attorney of Scarsdale be aware of every contract Flock has ever
It's a great question.
executed?
That was my first thought.
Right.
Right? He's either read them all, or the vast majority of them, or he believes what some Flock salesperson told him. So I guess good for him on the first count if he did read them all, and shame on him if he just believed the salesperson who told him.
Also, why would you take a meeting with the salesperson as the village attorney? That seems
odd. Yeah.
To say the least.
To say the least.
Is it wrong for members of this community to question a surveillance contract, to ask about data collection or the impact on our children who make mistakes, who test boundaries, and who deserve the same space for youthful error that many of us once had? What happens when those mistakes are recorded and archived? What of our own mistakes? What happens when that data ends up on the wrong hands?
Another good example is 23andMe. If you've done any of those genetic tests, they guaranteed it would only be used for medical purposes. It was super private. Flash forward a few years later, and there's a list of Jews with genetic Jews on the internet for purchase on the dark web.
The capital firm Homegrown and Flock Safety have partnered with a new endeavor called the Thriving Cities Fund, where they have $10 million being allocated to private businesses to put Flock cameras on their property. As a journalist who's covered antitrust frequently, I have a lot of questions about this sole source justification letter and Flock paying for their own expansion, because there are other vendors that can provide surveillance cameras. There are certainly other companies that make license plate readers, because I can pay toll by plate when I travel to cover a story. So I'm a bit confused how they can say they're the only company that provides this specific product or service. It seems to me the only thing unique about Flock is that they can provide the network of cameras. So are they trying to monopolize the mass surveillance space?
China, for example, one of the things that we kind of look down on in China is the amazing surveillance system that is used and interlocked at kind of social scores, and the fact that all these databases are linked gives a tremendous amount of control over individual citizens and their right to express themselves and dispute what the government is doing. We have the same technologies here. And increasingly, we're strengthening them. We haven't had the political will to do the same thing that China has. We may have that will soon, if not now.
I want to talk about China for a second. A friend actually sent me an article, an essay from the Times this morning from Megan K. Stack, who wrote people who screen as potential political agitators, for example, can be prevented from stepping onto trains bound for Beijing. And, she also wrote that people in China see this technology as useful. Oh, it's fine if you just leave your bag out, or you let your young son sort of wander in a crowd, because we have cameras everywhere. No one's going to do anything. But also you have this aspect of limiting political speech in China. Is there something fundamentally American about not having this mass surveillance in the US, having the freedom to move, to protest? Is that something you're worried about?
Oh, very much. I think the freedom to assemble, to redress our government for grievances is Amendment 1.
Right.
The ability to limit that and cause people to fear to exercise that right, I think that is anti-American. And I do think, and a lot of what the citizens here are saying is like, we just had a protest in Chase Park. A bunch of people are saying that they wouldn't have attended had there been facial recognition. Again, these databases, and this is another thing that is important to recognize, these databases feed each other. That because you have license plate, driver's license readers with an image, and that those images are fed into a government database. We all have facial recognition. We have facial recognition due to TSA checkpoints. These can be used to individually recognize people and track them. And you feed that into a camera and a computer, and all of a sudden you can track individuals and see them where they're going.
Our democracy is on a slippery slope. And this just really confirms for me that, when you see it happen in your own town, it sort of strikes a little bit differently. I wasn't really even aware of what Flock was doing. I wasn't really aware of them much, even as a company, even though I believe they have a market cap now of some $7.5 billion. Wow. And they're funded by every VC company in Silicon Valley. 6 months ago, I couldn't have told you the first thing about them. And now here they are. They'll be watching me wherever I go.
In the case of Scarsdale, the funding has not come through. On July 8th, Mayor Arrest let the town know that they were not approved for the grant that was intended to pay for the flock contract, and it has been paused.
Okay, good evening again. I have 4 items to discuss tonight. Before I get to those, however, I want to extend our deepest condolences for the loss of life and share that the thoughts and prayers of this board and our community are with everyone impacted by the flooding in both Texas and North Carolina. I'd also like to recognize that July is Disability Pride Month, an important time to celebrate the contributions and diversity of the disability community. And on a lighter note, July is also National Ice Cream Month, something we can all enjoy as we come together this summer. First, a reminder. We have paused the technology upgrade program with Flock Safety following notification that our grant application was not approved. The police department had already begun developing a contingency plan in anticipation of this possibility, and we have now asked them to expedite that work and return to this board in September. This timeline allows for thoughtful revisions and ensures the recommendations can be shared with both the board and the broader community. We also recognize that many residents are away at times over the summer and want to allow for the greatest possible community engagement. To clarify, the agreement with Flock Safety has not been canceled, but no further steps will be taken until all options for public safety upgrades are reviewed at a public meeting in September.
Whether or not Flock is intentionally securing contracts in a surreptitious fashion, they've definitely maintained a low profile for a $7.5 billion company with cameras in 5,000 communities across 49 states. You might think a national network of cameras in the US being established would require high-profile debate on the nightly news, legislation passing through Congress, and the president's signature. But this is something that maybe a local blogger will take interest in. It takes 35 seconds of a town board meeting and the police chief's signature. Mass surveillance feels like something that a dictator would usher in with the help of his army, but it's the mayor of a town and a salesman at a corporation. This is how mass surveillance can take hold. Cameras installed in every community as a public service in the name of safety. On Saturday, August 2nd, my investigative report into Flock was published in Drop Site News, where I work as a correspondent. On Monday, August 4th, Police Chief Stephen Delbene sent a memo regarding the Flock Safety contract to the village board. And then, on the morning of Wednesday, August 6th, the village board canceled the contract. It might not feel like in America right now, petitioning your local government to overturn a multi-million-dollar contract will actually result in a policy change, or showing up to your town board meetings and voicing your concerns about mass surveillance will lead them to make a different decision than what they've already voted on. But I think this might be a case where that did matter, and does. And it might feel like investigative journalism is something that's dying in America, but I'd like to believe it's alive and well. And I think the story of mass surveillance and flock safety is one I'm just beginning to tell. So subscribe and follow along, and we'll all see where this goes.
Who knows? Maybe we'll fly down to Sedona.
I know.
Stay with my friend.
There you go.
I'm trying to see what the weather is like in Sedona this time of year. 89 degrees 2 hours before sunset.